Hi, I'm divorce prep coach Alex Beatty. Welcome to the Divorce Planner Podcast. If you're at a point in your marriage where you're not sure what comes next, remember the best thing you can do is to focus on what's in your control. I'm a divorce prep coach who helps people navigate one of life's most challenging transitions with financial clarity and confidence. Drawing from my own divorce experience and my years as a divorce prep expert, my approach combines project management expertise with deep empathy. Today, we're learning all about collaborative divorce. Let's dive in. I'm so excited to be talking to my guest today. She is an attorney who specializes in collaborative divorce, Renee Turner. Thank you so much for joining me. I just want to give a little bit more of an introduction to our audience. With 15 plus years of experience in family law, Renee brings a unique perspective to divorce through her focus on collaborative solutions. Her approach helps families find peaceful resolution while protecting their interests and preserving relationships. Collaborative divorce is a much more kind of humane way to go through the process. And that's why I was really excited about having you on today, because I've never covered this subject. And it's kind of a newer idea, I would say, right? In the past 10, 20 years.
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm just going to jump right in. So my first question is what are the key differences that someone would notice between collaborative divorce and like a mediation or traditional litigation?
Sure. So in a collaborative divorce, both spouses must agree from the onset to resolve the divorce amicably and privately. Usually one spouse's attorney contacts the other spouse and or their attorney to inform them that their husband or wife has initiated a collaborative process. And the goal is to avoid litigation and to reach mutually agreeable solutions together. Whereas in a litigated divorce, like the traditional process, it's adversarial from the start. There has to be the formal filing of a summons and a complaint. The summons is the formal notification to the non-filing spouse that the filing spouse has initiated a court proceeding to move forward with a divorce. And then the complaint outlines the desired outcome by the filing spouse. And the summons and complaint have to be formally served through personal service on the non-filing spouse, and that's either through a process server or, in some jurisdictions, the sheriff's office will effectuate service.
What I love about the mediation and collaborative divorce process is, as they said, it's a much more kind of humane way to go through it. The basis of the work that I do as a divorce prep coach is really that there's an emotional side to divorce and there's a business side. You want to separate the two and address them both, but make sure that your big emotions aren't making decisions for you or dragging out the process. And the goal, whether you are married and have children or you're married and you have fur babies or no children, is to dissolve this contract in a way so that both parties can go on and be happy people and continue on with their lives. You mentioned the kind of a team. What is a collaborative divorce team, and how do those people work with the couple that's divorcing?
Yeah, sure. So both spouses typically hire divorced attorneys who specialize in facilitating a collaborative divorce. So obviously there'll be attorneys, and the attorneys, their focus is to guide each spouse through the legal aspects of the divorce, but ensuring that the attorneys are protecting their clients' rights and making sure that there's not a winner or a loser, but that the collaborating parties understand and reach a fair and mutually agreeable settlement agreement at the end. But there are situations where outside of the attorneys, there may need to be other professional help. And so if there's complex financial issues, the attorneys can ask a neutral certified financial planner or a divorce financial analyst to become involved. And that person, it's only one, will help the couple and the attorneys understand the financial situation. So that could include if there are significant assets, liabilities, and then how to divide those and make sure if there's significant income, what the spousal support should look like, things like that. If there are minor children involved and there are sensitive issues regarding custody, visitation, co-parenting, the attorney can ask a child psychologist or family therapist to become involved, and they would help the couple and the attorneys create a parenting plan that would prioritize the children's best interests. So, taking away, like you said, the emotion on the parents, but focusing on the children and how best this would facilitate their moving forward with the parents divorced. I did want to highlight that there's a key difference between a collaborative divorce and an uncontested divorce. So, a collaborative divorce, both spouses, they have to sign what's known as a collaborative law participation agreement. And this is an agreement where they're committing to settle their issues without going to litigation. And in the process, everyone on the team, so the attorneys, any mental health professionals, any financial experts, they're trained in collaborative law and they have to agree to withdraw if the case moves to litigation. That means if either spouse decides that this process is not working for them, or if they initiate a court proceeding by filing what I said, the summons and complaint, the attorneys and the other professionals typically have to withdraw, and then the spouses need to hire new attorneys for litigation. And this is because the collaborative process is confidential. When you get divorced in a litigated fashion, it's not private, it's public. Anyone can have access to the information. But in a collaborative process, it's private, confidential, and nothing that's discussed during the negotiations can be used against you in court. And so, because these professionals have all this information, they obviously would be biased and not be able to present the information in a neutral fashion. But there's another option is the uncontested process, which is basically you're using lawyers to negotiate a settlement agreement, and there's no requirement that they sign the collaborative law participation agreement. They just negotiate the settlement between the two spouses. And if the negotiations break down and there is a need to file in court, those attorneys can maintain the representation.
We'll be back after a quick break. Feeling overwhelmed about the possibility of a divorce and not sure where to start? Book a free 15-minute strategy call with me. During our time, we'll talk about where you are in the process and what next steps could be. To schedule your call and learn more about my coaching program, head over to www.thedivorceplanner.net/coaching. Let's get back to today's episode. I love that the stakes are high in terms of when you make a commitment to do collaborative divorce, that you understand you have to start from scratch should it fall apart. Because that really tells me that the people who are signing on and have an understanding of what they're signing up for, you really have to be really committed to say, okay, then I'm going to build from scratch again, which I like. It's kind of like a game of chicken a little bit. Like we're going to stay the course. Nobody's jumping off track. That's a kind of accountability of recognizing, look, this isn't going to be necessarily a walk in the park, but we're acknowledging that our intentions are in a certain place, which I love. You mentioned a CDFA. I'm actually going to be talking with Joseph De Cruz, a CDFA and a wealth management advisor later this month. It's for my in conversation with, and it's Ask a CDFA anything you want. You know what I love about the collaborative divorce process is it's almost as if you just have this like pop up of every person you could possibly need from your attorney, and then all more kind of humane versions of who you need to participate if necessary are just easily accessible at your fingertips. I encourage people to always, whether it's watching or listening to this conversation, digging into my blog, educate yourself more about the process before you begin so you really understand. Divorce is the dissolution of a contract that you have signed with the state, unless you have a pre or post nup and have your own stipulations to the process. So, making sure you understand what the process is going to be in your state, as well as what the laws in your state are before you start this. It's really good to kind of have that information so it's not such a shock to the system. I will just off cuff, like, is collaborative divorce something that's available in all 50 states?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, it's just a process of divorcing. And it's important to know that we say like avoiding court when we're talking about uncontested and collaborative divorce. But in order to be divorced, a judge has to issue a judgment of divorce. So you go through the process of resolving all of the divorce related issues outside of court. But ultimately, your attorneys are going to file the court documents and the judge is going to have to review it. The judge is going to have to confirm that it's fair and in accordance with the law, and then sign a judgment of divorce that officially ends your marriage. So I don't want people to think that you're never going, like you personally won't have to go to court, or the lawyers will be filing the paperwork.
Thank you for that clarification, which is true. And what I love about collaborative divorce, not only that it's kind of much more of a commitment that you're both setting as well as your team, as opposed to like hiring a bulldog attorney who's like, I'm going to get everything you want. Like everybody's coming to the table saying, look, we're looking for something that is equitable, right? Like we want the best, as opposed to running up that cash register of we're going to drag this process out. But you have more say over the outcome. And that's what you want, like in everything in your life, right? You want more ownership over what the final points are of your divorce as opposed to handing it over to a third party. So I think a lot of people are probably watching or listening to this and be like, well, I don't think that's going to work for my situation, which I get a lot because I do talk about mediation and then collaborative being ways that I always recommend people to go. And I think people would be surprised to find out, kind of the scope of who this is right for. What qualities indicate that somebody or a couple is a good candidate for this type of divorce process, collaborative divorce?
Yeah. So I think first, obviously, a willingness to collaborate and cooperate with each other. So both spouses have to be open and willing to communicate openly and honestly with each other, especially about sensitive issues regarding finances and parenting. But you have to remember that you're going to have attorneys representing you. So it's not as if you're speaking directly to your spouse. You have your attorney can speak on your behalf, but you can't come to it in a contentious fashion and think that you're going to reach a resolution. You have to be willing to cooperate. I also think there has to be a commitment to avoid litigation, like we said. And it's really, you talk about mediation and you're trying to save stress. Like you don't want to be going to court. You're in court all day. There's other people there. They're listening to your business. And you want to save your time. You want to save the stress and then also the expense. A contested divorce is much more expensive than collaborative process or mediation. And I think one that's really important is both spouses still have to respect each other and work in a civil way, even if they're no longer in love. It's really important that there has to be respect and a supportive environment in order for this to work. And I would just note that I think the collaborative and uncontested process are not appropriate if there's domestic violence or other forms of abuse. If one spouse feels unsafe or is being manipulated, then a traditional contested divorce process might be more appropriate. I also think that if you're open to being flexible and creative solutions, the collaborative divorce process is ideal because you get to decide for yourselves
Mhm.
what the issues look like how they're resolved, as opposed to a judge. A judge is just, like you said, a third party. He or she is not going to be intimately involved in your life and know exactly how you want your life to look moving forward. And if you do the collaborative process, you can be creative. It's a contract at the end of the day, and as long as you two agree to it and it's executed in a formal fashion, then it will uphold. So, and then the last thing, if there's a desire for privacy, which I think most people want their private matters to remain private, the collaborative process is ideal because, like I said, it's not going to court in a public proceeding where other people can have access to your information. And by access, it's not just about your personal relationship with your spouse, but like your finances, how you're raising your children, what that will look like. All of those things are public when it's a contested divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Wow. You really provided a lot of food for thought. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to touch on. First and foremost, you brought up the reality of the cost, right? Like my goal is always to educate people and have them prepare so not only do they get the outcome they want and have like reasonable expectations and understand the negotiation process, which we'll get to in a second, but also to save time and money going through the process. As of like 2024, the average cost of a problem-free litigation, and let's be honest, I've never heard of one. It was like
Right.
close to $20,000 that you could be taking with you on into your new life. And that's just the starting point. That's like when when you see an advertisement for the car and they show you one that's fully loaded. And then with the asterisk at the bottom, it's like the base model's like $50,000 less than this version. Collaborative divorce is definitely a much more humane, but also cost effective way to go through the process, especially if you are more prepared. You're a partner in this process. So showing up to a collaborative divorce, mediation, or even litigation, we don't want to get there. Like that should be the last resort. But showing up in the process earlier, understanding that you need to be an active part of the process because your attorney can't kind of get you what you are looking for if you don't know what that is, number one, if you don't understand your financial realities and can anticipate how it'll change, you want to go into this whole process really clear eyed and and kind of looking at what the laws in your state are, because that's going to dictate what you guys have to split up, as well as what your realities are. You can't split what you don't have, right? So being aware of that early on in the process, communicating well with your attorney, being able to say, hey, I don't understand this, or I found this out, let me know. It's got to be a good back and forth, which always for me goes back into, if you're new to the process, watching or listening, and you need to educate yourself, please head over to my blog. I have multiple posts, tips from divorce attorneys, what you need to know going into the process for you to check out. But again, saving that money is so important. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, Renee, is that a lot of people don't have experience negotiating, right? They think they're going into a divorce and it's a winner take all situation. It's not true. The truth of the matter is it is a negotiation. And so for you to understand what your goals and priorities are going into it is really going to help you stay focused, number one, but also it's going to get you closer to an outcome that you want, because if you have flexibility and if you can anticipate and work together, it's a give and a take. It's, as I said, it's one size takes all. You kind of touched on a little bit like how the collaborative process handles complex asset situations. Like even before you get to the point where perhaps you're bringing in a CDFA, like how is it different than the litigation process to kind of deal with that?
Yeah. So, like you said, I already mentioned that financial experts could be brought in, but I want to stress here the option of creative and customized solutions. If one spouse owns a business, the couple might agree on a buyout plan. They may decide to continue to co-own the business, but have boundaries around its operation. And so, there's just so many ways that you can structure it in a way that works for you and your family moving forward, as opposed to in litigation, the court's ruling is just going to be based on like a rigid understanding of the facts and maybe based on prior case law and what other people did, but it's not going to be unique to your specific situation. And so just being mindful of having the option to create a solution that works for you and your soon to be former spouse. And then another thing is the confidentiality. Like, do you really want information about your business in the public record? Probably not. But if you go through the collaborative process, then it can remain private. So I think people need to be aware of that.
Yeah, privacy is everything, especially now because everything is like a Google search away from anybody reading, which I despise. And there are businesses that have sprung up because of just sharing public information because they just get paid by advertisers, but it's your stuff that's out there. So I completely agree with you. We'll be right back after a quick break. Subscribe to the Divorce Planner's weekly newsletter and get divorce prep tips, financial planning tools, and expert insights delivered discreetly to your inbox. Sign up at www.thedivorceplanner.net. Let's get back to today's episode. When we're talking about collaborative divorce, whether you have children or not, when the focus is on families who are going through that process, making sure that as I said, this is going to set the tone for then your co-parenting, right? So being able to approach it with this dedication to a collaborative process is going to extend beyond this dissolution of your marriage and into what your lives are going to be like as parents after your divorce. So, how does the collaborative approach really impact co parenting dynamics? And if you could just speak on how people, because I will tell you personally, the thing that really, and there's so many triggers when you go through the divorce process, right? I love to say money equals feelings, right? And parenting time equals feelings. So for me personally, I had to step out of my mediation when it came time to kind of talk about the parenting stuff because that to me was the knife in the heart of I never thought I wouldn't be with my kids full time, right? So again, anticipating and having a say in that process. What are your observations and how this kind of affects the collaborative process, the co-parenting relationship, and building like a parenting plan together during the collaborative process?
Yeah, so I think because there's the focus on working together to reach a resolution, since you're starting from that place and it's not as contentious, I think there's an ongoing feeling with parents that they can communicate with their co-parent and reach resolutions in, a friendly manner as opposed to always being hostile. And in terms of like I said, you have more control over your co-parenting arrangement moving forward. And so, like you said, with the parenting plans, the parents are able to customize them to fit their family situation. And it really just takes away that emotion that comes with having to face the reality that this is going to be your life moving forward. But knowing that you have an intimate say in what that looks like. And you don't want a judge to decide that for you and for your children. Because at the end of the day, it may not work. And then you're just going to end up back in court. And, you're already spending whatever money you're for the divorce. And you don't want to have to keep on going back to court to litigate every issue that comes up. It's really important to resolve them from the get go. And, court's there for a reason. If you need it, fine. But I really think that if you can establish a good co-parenting relationship and parenting plan from the beginning, it will relieve a lot of headache moving forward. I also think that the collaborative process reduces the stress for children because honestly, when you do a litigated divorce, they may have court appointed attorneys that are representing their interests separately from their parents, and they may be asked to answer questions about their parents and how their relationship is. And you don't want to subject your kids to that kind of interrogation. They may feel like obligated to say one thing about one parent as opposed to another. They may be asked to testify. There's just no need to subject your children to that. And so, if you can do a collaborative process where you, as parents who are aware of your children's best interests, can come to a resolution, it's just much better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you just saw that my jaw went on the floor. Like the idea of children having their own attorney as a part of this process to talk about it, their children. Divorce is like, even no matter, I'm going to say it, DV excluded, no matter what your situation is, there is a very grown up and simple resolution. Your North Star should be your kid. End of story. Forces between grown-ups, kids have really nothing to do with it. Make it as easy for them as possible. And, if this is your situation, I've got on the blog a comprehensive guide of how to guide children through divorce so they not only survive but thrive, because they can thrive, but you have to set the tone in this. Thank you for all the detail on the parenting plan conversation of it all and collaborative divorce. My position is really to make people their own best advocates. And what I mean by that is, like, this goes back to educating yourself by watching this. By the way, kudos if you've joined us live, or if you're watching or listening later. That's your first step. Is knowledge is power, number one. And when we're talking about things like whether it's negotiations, but specifically with parenting plans, write out the things that are important to you before to talk to your attorney about. Don't wait to be reactive, be proactive in this process. Whether it is work schedules you guys have to take into consideration, perhaps it's the kids' schedule. We all know that between school, after school activities, our jobs, there's some real logistical challenges. Start early with that, right? Or things that you would like. So you're bringing something to the table. This is your life. And these experts are here to help figure out how to make that happen for you. Like, switch your mindset when you're going into this. Going back to building those parenting plans, have as much specificity in there as possible. Yeah. And I know that there are situations where there are really high conflict dynamics. This process can still work for you
Yeah.
if you're in a high conflict dynamic. I spoke with parenting plan expert coach Samantha Boss. I have an interview with her, actually two, on my website for people who are interested. This process is going to be what you make it. Try to stay in control of as much as you can during this process, not handing it over. I know we've blown by our 25 minutes and you actually have lawyering to get back to. So I'm going to start to like wrap it up and just say, what are some initial steps that people should take if they're interested in collaborative divorce, first and foremost, and also if they're interested in working with you?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is to talk to an attorney who specializes in collaborative divorce. I do. You can reach out to me. And I am huge on client education. I want my clients to have as much information up front so that they can make informed decisions for themselves because I can't make those decisions for them. I just provide the information. So you really want to make sure that when you reach out to an attorney that they're able to explain the process, answer any of your questions, and assess whether collaborative divorce is a good fit for you and your spouse under your circumstances. And then I think you have to, once you have that conversation, take a step back and assess whether you think that you and your spouse can collaborate effectively. And think about, are you able to have open and honest communication, keep everything confidential, and commit to resolving the issues without going through litigation? Only you're going to be able to answer those questions for yourself. And You don't want to start a process that ultimately may not work. But I do want to say that, like you said, litigation should be the last resort. So you always have it in your back pocket. Like, don't feel stuck. Don't feel like you can't leave an unhappy marriage. You can. And it's just a matter of how you go about doing it. But it doesn't always have to start with going to court
I
first.
love that. That is 100% true. And the top of what you were saying, going into your consultations when you're taking those meetings as prepared as possible puts you in the best position, not only to find somebody who's the right fit, but you're going to get a lot of information if you're prepared kind of financially, if you understand what your assets are. So as you're kind of trying this person on and getting to know them, just like they're doing the same to see if it's going to be a good fit, I have a freebie 24 questions to ask a divorce attorney or a mediator. It's a really great jumping off point for people to start getting into the habit of being organized, to understand like the questions just are a starting point and will get you thinking about, oh, okay, well, this makes me feel like I need to ask about this. Get organized. I'm always preaching this. Look, your divorce is going to be another full time job you're adding to your plate for a while. So, starting that process as organized as possible is really going to serve you. And then you can go into meetings with people like today's guest, attorney Renee Turner, prepared and be able to make the most of your time. Renee, thank you so much for this conversation today. It was really enlightening. I've never covered collaborative divorce. So you are my collaborative divorce 101. But I hope this is the first of many conversations, Renee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. It's so nice talking to you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you found it helpful. For more free resources, check out my blog at www.thedivorceplanner.net/blog. You'll find articles on how to emotionally and financially prepare for divorce, gain insights into the process from divorce experts, and empower yourself with tips and tools that make your divorce journey easier. And you can follow me on Instagram at the.divorce.planner, on Facebook at Divorce Prep, and on YouTube at The Divorce Planner for daily divorce prep tips and support. I've helped hundreds of clients and thousands more with my digital divorce prep tools prepare for divorce, and I'd be honored to support you too. I'm Alex Beatty, and this has been the Divorce Planner Podcast. Until next time, remember, divorce is hard. Preparing for one doesn't have to be.